Jack, okay. Ready to go? Well, good afternoon, everybody, and can I extend a very warm welcome to Falkirk Council's Planning Review Committee. You're invited to attend a meeting of the above to be held at the Grangemouth Community Education Unit on Friday the 12th of May 2023 at 1 p.m. In accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, the convener, which is myself, has directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow a remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will be live streamed. Before we go for any apologies, I'll just say that I would like all members to introduce themselves. I'll start with you, Councillor Kerr.
Councillor James Kerr.
Councillor Rolf Kelly.
These are the two other members of today's committee. We'll now go to officers. Douglas.
Thanks, Convener. Douglas Blythe, Team Leader in Legal Services and the Legal Advisor to the committee.
Thank you, Convener. John Milne, Senior Planning Officer within Police Services.
Thank you.
And Jack Frawley, Team Leader, Committee Services.
Thank you for that, gentlemen. Now go. Any apologies, Douglas?
Apologies from Provost.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item 2 in your agenda, which is declaration of interest. And just for clarity, I'll read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? Okay, none noted. That takes us now to item 3 on your agenda today. It's the Planning Review Committee procedures, very important. It's pages 3 to 7 in your agenda, and we'll go to Douglas Blythe to give us an overview. Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you, Convener. As you said, the local review body procedures are start at page 4 of the agenda. They do run for a few pages, but you'll be pleased to know I won't go through them line by line. I'll just pick out the main points. The starting point is this is a review of an officer's decision. The Council's Planning Review Committee is the Council's local review body for the purposes of the review of that decision. This meeting is convened today to consider 2 applications. In terms of the procedures, these are governed by the Town and Country Planning Schemes of Delegation and Local Review Procedure Scotland Regulations 2013. All meetings are to be held in public, and to comply with the requirement that the Review Committee acts freely and openly, Review Committee members will not be able to engage in conversation or correspondence about any case before them with any parties. Other than when the Review Committee is in session, there will not be an opportunity for them to engage with members of the Review Committee in conversation or in writing. I think it's important to stress that the only people entitled to participate in the procedure today are at this table and in accordance with the regulations. We're quoted today, the members drawn from the Planning Committee, and myself and John are the legal and planning advisors to the committee. In terms of the procedure, Convener, once the review is submitted, the papers for that are compiled and drawn together for review by the committee. The first job for the committee is to assess whether there's sufficient information for them to make a decision or potentially invoke any further procedure. And the further procedures are as outlined at section 3 of the procedures, namely further written submissions, a hearing session, or indeed a site inspection of the application site. The procedures in respect of each procedure are set out in sections 4, 5 and 6. And as you'll be aware, we've already had further written procedures in respect of NPF 4, and the committee carried out a site visit in February to make themselves familiar with the physical characteristics of the site. That's it in terms of the procedures. Convener, obviously, if there any other procedure is invoked by the committee, then there are set rules governing that or those procedures. Just touching on the assessment of the applications, Convener, just as a reminder, as with any planning decision, this committee will assess the application de novo and will determine it in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations dictate otherwise. That's the same as with any planning decision that members are faced with, either at planning committee or a predetermination. It's really, and it's a case of just identifying the proper policies and interpreting them and assessing the application in accordance with the development plan, and balancing those policies. And if looking to make a departure from the development plan, considering the weight to be given to any material considerations. So I think that's probably it from me, Convener. Mr. Milne will be able to give any planning advice as matters are considered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blythe. That takes us on then to item 4 on your agenda, which is the planning application P220067 PPP, development of land for residential use at land to the east of Newland, Stanburn. It's pages 8 to 20. We've got the agenda and the previous agendas, and the report is by Senior Planning Officer John Milne, who's today's planning advisor. Thank you, Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Convener. Planning application P//22/0067/PPP seeks the principle of development at a site on land to the east of Newlands, Stanburn. That's in page 188 of your previous papers. While the application seeks the principle of development, it is indicated that a total of 3 houses may be introduced. However, this indicative layout is only indicative, and members are cautioned as to any reliance on house numbers, designs or positions. A statement of appeal has been prepared by the agent, Mr. Benny, which forms part of your papers. As outlined in the officer's report on handling, that's page 195 of your papers, consultation responses have been received from Scottish Water, the Coal Authority, Falkirk Council, Environmental Protection Unit and our Roads Development Unit. Specific attention is given to the consultation response from the Roads Development Unit, which is page 213 of your papers, with regard to concerns regarding vehicular access visibility displays. Representation has been received from Avonbridge and Stanburn Community Council, that's pages 214 to 216, and 35 contributors summarised in the report on handling. The application site is within the Falkirk Local Development Plan 2 area, designated as countryside and within the Avon Valley local landscape area. FLDP2 policies which may be applicable are PE14 countryside, HC05 housing in the countryside and PE18 landscape, or any other policies deemed relevant by the review board. These are supported by Falkirk Council supplementary guidance documents SGO1, development in the countryside, and SGO9, landscape character assessment and landscape designations. In terms of NPF 4, both the appellant and the planning authority were requested to make comment on applicable policies. The appellant commented on policy 3, that biodiversity, policy 5, soils, policy 14, design, quality and place, and policy 16, quality homes, and concludes that the proposed development can be reasonably justified. These are all on pages 11 to 3 of your papers. In contrast, the planning authority draws reference to policy 1, tackling the climate and nature crisis, policy 2, climate change and adoption, policy 4, natural places, policy 15, local living and 20-minute neighbourhoods, policy 16, quality homes, Policy 17, rural homes, and Policy 28, health and safety, and concludes that the original decision to refuse the proposal is only seen to be reinforced by the relevant NPF 4 policies. This is all in pages 16 to 20 of your report. Thank you, Convener.
I'm now going to open it up. Members, Councillor Kerr, would like to come in at this stage?
Thanks, Convener. A question for Mr Millen. You mentioned that the roads had concerns, visibility display. And may I say that the offset Convener, even though I was very disappointed that the hearings didn't go ahead when they should have in February, as I've said previously, that these are people's lives we're dealing with, whether it's for or against these decisions. It was good to go in the site visit and see the characteristic of the area. So my question is, Mr Millen, there's already a building there. Well, there was founds there that's got planning. So why would we have concerns for the entrance if there wasn't concerns when that house was up for the last time? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I would draw your attention to page 213 of your previous enclosures, which is the road's response to this application. Without being pedantic, if I could just explain that the application site lies in a rural location on C62 southwest of Candy Farm. C62 is an adopted light road without footway lighting provision, and whose restricted geometry and narrow width is typical on many rural roads in this area. The provision of the access proposed in the drawings given wouldn't provide an acceptable visibility display, as NDRG advises at least 160 metres, given it is a national speed limit road and there is a blind bend situated 60 metres in the northeast of the access. Vehicular traffic generated by the proposal is unlikely to significantly affect the capacity of the public road network. However, the development may result in pedestrian traffic being generated, which would not support having regard to the absence of footway and lighting in the area. In view of the rural setting of the site and lack of pedestrian facilities in the area, it is advised that consent should only be granted if the proposed is essential to pursuance of agriculture, forestry or other economic activity appropriate to a rural location. In summary, the concern detailed in this response could be used to support a recommendation of refusal of planning permission, which you may be considering. However, in the event the application is approved, no roads related conditions are requested. So I think it's entirely up to you to take your own interpretation of that, but they're simply drawing attention to the deficiency in the visibility display according to the National Roads Design Guidance. But perhaps markedly, there are no road related conditions as requested if members are minded to grant.
Thanks, Mr Millen. It's not the M25 we're on here. It's a country road, and I represented that area for 5 years, and the road isn't going to change in the near future. But thanks for that information, Mr Millen.
Any others?
Just that's fine at the moment, if that's okay.
I've got you, Councillor Kelly. Anything at this time? Maybe I could just come back to your planning advisor in relation to what you said in relation to the fact if members were minded to grant, then there would be nothing in terms of conditions for roads. Is that what you said?
There would be no specific conditions with regards to roads. We would normally caveat any application with all road accesses shall be designed in accordance with the NRDG and so forth. So if roads had a specific concern about a visibility display dimension, they would normally include it in their detailed response. However, I would also remind members that this is a PPP application.
Yeah.
It's a proposal in principle.
Principle, yeah.
And with any application in principle, I would always be cautioned as to where road accesses, house positions, house plots are, because that can change should an application come forward. So basically what we're looking at here is a red line round the site. It might well be, although I can't personally see how, but it might well be that the road access provision may change. If not, we would consult roads anyway on any future application. But what we're looking at here is the principle of
development. Yeah, yeah. The other question I was going to ask her, well, more of an overview, because obviously members did go up on site and we had a good look round about. Obviously, as you understand, that members are no professionals. We're all laymen, and the fact is that in terms of technical observations, but the fact I'm quite sure that when I was standing there, that I didn't really have any major problems with the visibility, and we actually walked both ends of that. I mean, you were there yourself on the site visit. Was you not? You were on the site visit?
Yes, I was, convener, but again, that's your
that's my opinion.
determination.
Yeah, well,
I'm only here to advise and plan.
Well, exactly.
It's entirely up to yourself to be decision maker.
Yeah.
In terms of
well, I think we know that
these matters.
I think we know that, but what I was saying was in terms of the fact is that it was just to clarify that we were there on site and that members had a good walk up and down to see for themselves if there was any problems with the visibility. That's what I was getting to. Okay, I'll go back to you. Anything further?
Yeah, convener, thank you. With regards to the site visit, and I know every application is taken on their own merit, but I reckon 200 or 300 yards up the road, there was a development, and it looked like, I see a thumb in the countryside, the white buildings, and obviously we don't this because this is a PPP application, but there was a site there with, I think, 5 or 6 houses, and for me that to an extent has set a precedent there. If somebody had come in, and with regards to the existence of the low density of the housing, featuring houses located in generous plots in the area is probably a dominant landscape feature in Candy, and the potential to introduce a small number of additional dwelling houses within the area, I don't think will result in any change to the established characteristic of the surrounding area. The proposed development, I think, represents a natural development which, considered within the context and the nature of the character of Candy, I think it wouldn't look out of place, and for their reasons, convener, I think the proposal could be justified against terms policy P14, HCO5, and also what Mr. Mull mentioned, SGO1. And I think the relationship between this application site and the existing residential properties in Candy is such in the views of the proposed development can only be seen, it wouldn't be seen with the rest of the other properties and the the area. And may it been development set against a backdrop of these existing residential properties with all long, medium to long distance views towards the site. And as the proposed development will not introduce a discordant element in anybody's views or across the wider surrounding landscape, the development can, I think, can be justified in the terms of policy PE 18. And for this, convener, I'm quite happy to propose that we accept this application.
Okay. I'm going to come in. Councillor Kelly, you anything to say at this stage?
I'm quite happy to go along with permitting this in principle.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, coming back to Mr. Blythe, Douglas, you've been taking a note of the issues in relation to policies and that Councillor Kerr was giving us in that.
Referring that to Mr. Milne.
Right.
in regards to the- Apologies. I was just saying, convener, I will defer in a second to Mr. Milne just to try and gather together the policy
Right.
references, but Councillor Kerr, I think, did refer to policy PE 14, 8C05.
Mm-hmm.
And the supplementary guidance SG01.
Yeah.
So I think possibly if we're just to have a look at those policies, and because there are two ways of looking at it. The committee either decides that they've assessed the policies and finds the application complies with them or doesn't offend against them, or accepts that the application is contrary to the development plan, but there are material considerations which
Outweigh.
outweigh that,
Yeah.
and that would include items that Councillor Kerr has mentioned, such as the setting and the exercising your planning judgment about the aesthetics and the location, the dispersed nature of the settlement, and that the proposed application, albeit for an indicative number of units and at PPP stage, wouldn't introduce a discordant element to that. So I'd maybe ask Mr. Milne just to
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Milne.
Thank you, convener. While Douglas seeks to address the terms of the in clarification of the policy position, you're obviously aware that this is a PPP application. So in terms of any decision, in terms of planning conditions, would it be acceptable to allow the Director of Police Services to impose such reasonable conditions as considered appropriate? And not least, these would address landscape and setting, design, size and massing of new dwellings, materials, drainage, coal mining risk, and any other matters considered reasonable. Although I would seek further clarification from the board, are the members in a position that the number of units of the site are to be limited to 3 as in the indicative proposal?
Well, first of all, can I say this, Mr. Milne, thank you for that. But I think there's a wee bit of debate to go on here because we haven't really finalised. We've had Councillor Kerr come in with his overview and what he feels justified and supporting it. We've had Councillor Kelly coming in supporting it as well. But the fact is that there's maybe 1 or 2 issues that we just need clarified before we can say that we've got a threesome here that is supporting it. In terms of the issues in relation to the policies of the council, Councillor Kerr, I wonder if you could maybe just reiterate what you stated in terms of the support of the policies.
With regards to sorry, Mr. Frawley. With regards to policies P14, HC05 and SG01, the development of the countryside, I feel the nature of the scale of the development when the impact in the full scale of the area or in the visual impact of the area as well. There is along that road, there's a house next to the one that's getting developed now, and I didn't feel that other houses along that full road would have the visual impact of these houses for where the setting is. Obviously, as Mr. Blythe says, that it is contrary to the local plan, and I would be looking to take it out as mitigating circumstances because of the wider view across the surrounding landscape, and it can be justified in the terms of policy P18.
Okay, right. So where we are in terms of the proper procedures, as Mr. Blythe had stated at the very beginning, 2.2, in line with Regulation 12, the Review Committee may determine at the first meeting that the review documents provide sufficient information to enable them to determine the review, whereupon they may determine the review without further procedure. I'm going to ask both you gentlemen, are you happy to take a decision at this stage, and you don't need any more time in terms of the review with further procedures? You happy?
Happy, convener.
Happy? Okay,
Happy.
fine. Okay. Coming back to what the question that our planning advisor, Mr. Milne, had asked, two main questions that we've got to agree on is, first of all, the number of units, and the second one, is everybody happy in terms of what you stated regarding conditions put on by the director? Okay, just want to clarify that in the terminology.
Yes, thank you, convener.
Right.
Apologies if I was premature.
No.
In terms of planning conditions, would it be acceptable to allow the Director of Police Services to impose such reasonable conditions as considered appropriate? Not least, these would address landscape and setting, design, size and massing of the new dwellings, materials, drainage, coal mining risk, and any other matters considered reasonable. I would seek further clarification as to whether members would limit the site to 3, as in the indicative proposal, or not.
I'll come back to the mover of the motion on that one. You've heard what Mr. Millen has said in relation to the conditions and also the numbers.
Happy with Mr. Milne's summary, convener.
Happy?
Equally
Councillor
happy
Kelly?
with it, to stay at 3, yeah.
Okay then. Okay, Douglas, you've heard members. I think we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. We have got the advice for the planning advisor, Mr. Milne, in relation to the conditions that would need to be set out, and also the numbers. So I think we're quite happy with that. So you just want to form it up a wee bit. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. I think the position we've arrived at is, I think members do accept that the proposal is contrary to the development plan. However, touching on some of the elements in policies PE14, PE18 and SG01, that the scale and the setting of the proposed development would not offend the dispersed nature of the local established settlement within Stanburn and Candy, and an exercise of their planning judgment. They're prepared to grant consent for the PPP application with the conditions as outlined by Mr. Milne. I'll maybe ask Mr. Milne just to fill in any blanks that he thinks there may be there, just to kind of bolster the committee's deliberation.
Yes, thank you, Douglas. Obviously, having set the limit at 3, the members have really restricted any consequences of approval in principle. Obviously, any increase in number in 3 would change the position with regard to road access, with regard to positions of infrastructure and so forth. So with limiting the application to 3 units, there's no perceived potential for commuted payment, for instance. The numbers simply don't trigger that figure. In general terms, as a PPP application, we try to cover every element in planning conditions, but listening to members, landscape setting, design, size and the dwellings, materials, drainage, coal mining risk, road access, seem to be fairly reasonable aspects of the proposal in which to try to cover by planning condition. If there are any other anomalous matters come forward, which I haven't seen through the report, we would obviously consider whether it's reasonable to impose these as further planning conditions.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay, Douglas, do you want to sort of firm up? You said quite happy with that?
I think that's probably probably sums things up, convener. I think the clarification from Mr. Milne.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
I think what I'm taking is the committee are unanimous.
Okay.
To grant the application.
Yeah. Okay then, fine, thanks. What we'll do now is we'll take a between 5 and 10 minute recess. That gives members an opportunity to take a comfort break and then get the papers out for our next one. Okay? Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We'll reconvene today's local review body. That takes us on to item 5 on your agenda, which is planning application P21 0731 full construction of dwelling house at land to the north of 10 Manister Holdings Blackness. Once again, we'll go straight to our planning advisor, our senior planning officer, Mr. John Millen. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, convener. Planning application P//21/0731/FUL seeks detailed planning permission for the erection of a detached dwelling house on land to the north of 10 Mannerson Holdings Blackness. That's on page 474 of your papers. The application was submitted with an agricultural labour report, which was on page 178 of your papers. A statement of appeal has been prepared by the agent, Denham Partnership Architects. The report and handling of the application on page 505 of your papers indicates that consultation responses were received from the Roads Development Unit, Scottish Water, Environmental Protection Unit, Roads, Flooding, Museum Services and the Coal Authority. Of specific note is the consultation response from the Roads Development Unit, which is page 525 of the papers, which seeks alteration to the existing submissions. If such alterations are sought, this may not be achievable through the current application. Representation has been received from 9 contributors, including objection from Blackness Area Community Council. These are summarised on page 506 to 508 of your papers. The application site is within the Falkirk Local Development Plan 2 area, designated countryside, the South Bowness Local Landscape Area, and partly within a pipeline consultation zone. As such, the following policies may be applicable. FDLP2 policies, PE14 countryside, PE18 landscape, PE25 soils and agricultural land, PE27 vacant, derelict, unstable, contaminated land, HCO5 housing in the countryside, JE06 major hazards, and IR13 low and zero carbon development, or any other policies deemed relevant by the review board. These are supported by Falkirk Council Supplementary Guidance Document SGO1 development in the countryside, SGO9 landscape character assessment and landscape designations, and SG14 renewable and low carbon energy. In terms of NPF4, both the appellant and the planning authority were requested to comment on applicable policies. The appellant commented on policy 5, soils, 16, quality homes, 17, rural homes, 29, rural development. The appellant concludes that the development is justified by the policies of NPF 4, and that's pages 24 to 29 of your papers. In contrast, the planning authority draws reference to policy 1, tackling the climate and nature crisis, policy 2, climate change and adaptation, policy 4, natural places, policy 5, soils, policy 9, brownfield, vacant and derelict land and empty buildings, policy 11, energy, policy 17, rural homes, and policy 23, health and safety. In conclusion, the planning authority considers that NPF 4 policies do not introduce any matters of relevance to the development proposals that were not assessed in the report of handling prepared in determination of the application. And that conclusion and summary is in page 40 to 44 of your papers. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much for the summary there, Mr. Milne. I'm going to come in right away with this. Obviously, I've been on the council for over 30 years now. I've been on the planning committee or regularity committee. So it's changed its name a few times since then. And to be honest with you, I have to say this in all sincerity, that during this period of time, I don't think I've ever seen an application coming forward that's got support of the Scottish Agricultural College that's ever been refused. The fact of the matter is now we're dealing with a situation here at this local review because of the fact is that an officer has determined that this application should not be supported for a number of reasons, as already outlined and contained within it. I would totally disagree with this, because I feel quite strong, very strongly indeed, that the Scottish Agricultural College in determining their conclusions to this, and also in the past history that they've had in dealing with applications in the countryside. Now, applications in the countryside can sometimes be difficult, and as already been stated this morning, every application is dealt with on its merits. Now, just up the road from where we are at the moment, we had an application that was granted for a huge house up there. And then we had another application that came in. It was recommended to refuse. 2 months later, the application came back in, and we went out on site. Now, at that particular site visit, I'm sure that members will remember, because there was quite a number of councillors that had only just come on the planning, and it was important, it was imperative that members were aware the situation in relation to applications coming forward with new houses in the countryside. And the planning officer that day spent about 10-15 minutes explaining the reasoning behind the countryside applications, and we took that all on board. The fact is that quite clearly, when you're taking advice from officers, you're taking advice from organisations, then you've got to look at them. You've got to look at them as they come in. The reasoning in terms of the council's policies and what's supporting this application, as far as I'm concerned, is that policy 8C05 housing in the countryside. This policy supports proposal for housing development in the countryside of a scale, layout, design suitable to the intended location and circumstances. These circumstances include housing required for the pursuance of agriculture. In this instance, the applicant's contention that the proposed development house is necessary to support an existing agricultural business comprising of livestock, etc. Details on the application and the policy criteria is contained in the Falkirk Council Supplementary Guidance SGO1 Development in the Countryside. And all throughout the report that came forward by the Scottish Agricultural College, and I've got to say this quite clearly, that the Scottish Agricultural College, over the years that I've been in the council, have came forward with numerous supporting documentation. And as I said initially, I've never seen, and can't remember, that any time the MD had went against these professionals. It states quite clearly that this application site is located within a rural area as defined on the Scottish Government's Urban Rural Classification Mapping. MPF Policy 17 supports a proposal for new homes in rural areas where it has been demonstrated that it is essential to meet the needs of farm workers necessary. The applicant has been provided an updated labour report that demonstrates this, and that's really important. At the time of making the application, the applicants were declared as living in a cottage. The temporary arrangement has come to an end, and Mr. C. McGregor are taking up the occupancy on the 31st of May. That cottage is in joint ownership, and Mr. and Mrs. Russell have been given a notice to quit. Now, just because of the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Russell have been given a notice to quit doesn't mean to say that we grant an application for a new house in the countryside. The fact is that Policy 17 also requires new proposals to be suitably scaled, sited and designed, and the reason for refusal, the planning officer makes the following macro statements. The layout and scale is unsuitable, unsatisfactory landscape fit, vehicular access not in the best interest of road safety. In relation to the access, there is no objection from the Council Flooding Team or Road Development Unit, subject to conditions. There is no technical reason or evidence to suggest that the access would be unsafe. The layout of the house is not a town planning matter, the scale is. The proposed development is a 1.5-storey property with 3 bedroom and upper floor. This entirely commemorates with the needs of the farmer. The application site is within an area of countryside that the council has labelled as Bowness South Landscape Area. A local landscape area is not a statutory designation, and as such is not treated as a natural heritage asset. Notwithstanding this, The sensitivity of the area supplementary guidance 9th April 2021 is its elevated position, and the concern is woodland planting and development. The primary school, the development house, will not be an elevated position. The Blawlawn Farm is located in the lowest reaches of Riverview, and the key principle of the NPF is to encourage rural economic activity, and that's the mainstay and the thrust of this this application. In terms of the before I go into the conclusion, the Falkirk Council supplementary guidance about SDO1 development in the countryside. SDO1 recognises the area and the nature of a rural business. That means the manager or employees need to live on the site. If a house is required on the site for economic activity, all of the following criteria must be met. The submission of a business plan to demonstrate that the business has been planned on a sound financial basis and the business is economically viable. The application is supported by a business plan and it's a new enterprise. The submission of a supporting statement to demonstrate the operational need for the additional house and associating with the business had been well documented by the full and in-depth report by the Scottish Agricultural College, given its full support. Now, the conclusion for the Agricultural College states quite clearly, James Stewart and Rana Russell have as new entrants to farming developed Blawlawn Farm into a promising small farm through considerable investment in time and money. Their enthusiasm and commitment to agriculture producing food for direct sale to the public is commendable and should be encouraged. It is demonstrated that the current labour requirements of the farming business is 1.14 standard labour units. It should also be noted that the business is still in development with increasing livestock numbers and aspiration to develop direct sales further. I think they've seen the amount of sheep that were running about when we were down there. The current dwelling adjacent to the farmland park owned by James Stewart is not fit for purpose as a farmhouse and to be sold due to the wishes of the third party owner. A dwelling situated on the farm for Jamie and Rana to live is important for the future development of the farming business. To have someone present on farm at all times is imperative for animal welfare, husbandry, particularly during lambing season, but also for incidents of dog worrying. Security is much improved with on-site accommodation with theft and vandalism, a real concern in the area. Due to the location, there is no affordable housing land near the holding. As such, the only means forward is to build on the land. It is therefore concluded by the Agricultural College that there is agricultural justification for a house to be built in the farm so that Jamie and Rana can live on the holding to facilitate its future development, ensure welfare and meet security concerns. Now, I think we've all had an opportunity to go through this in detail in relation to support given by the Scottish Agricultural College. And by the way, they don't do this lightly. You just kind of go into the Agricultural College and say, right, I want to pay a fee and they want a report back, and we want you to ensure that the report that comes back is sufficient for us to get support at a local authority. That's not the basis. They're a top professional consultant business, and the fact is that they have in no detail and much detail given full support to this application. The deciding factor in my own decision is this very supportive in-depth report from the Scottish Agricultural College that clearly defines that there is justification. And to be honest with you, I'll go back again. I don't understand how this wasn't looked at initially, but we're all entitled to their opinion, that there is a justification for this proposed development. Reading their own conclusion, the proposed development is totally justified by the policies of the National Planning Framework, and I totally agree with their conclusions, and I would formally move at this stage that this application is minded to grant. So I'll open up for other members. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, convener. A question regarding the entrance, Mr. Noel. When we went to the site visit, there was a indication that the entrance might want to be moved. Is that still the case?
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's important to note that when we went to the site, we used the existing track entrance. That was an in situ entrance that allowed us access. This current application proposes a new access to serve the dwelling house. Now, if I could draw your attention to page 525 of your previous papers, which was the roads response on this new entrance. And if I, excuse me for being pedantic again, roads development have no objection to the proposal in principle. It is noted there is an indication of an agricultural shed. We agree with the visibility proposals put forward by the applicant, the appellant's roads consultant. However, that puts the new access in a dip with known flooding issues that have been addressed by the installation of road gullies, which will be vulnerable to damage by vehicles turning over them, entering or exiting the access. For that reason, on road safety grounds, I would ask that the access be moved 75 metres west of the school boundary wall to take the access out of the dip. Now, the difficulty with that is the formation of an access on a classified road in itself requires planning permission. So the alternatives to the board are available. In terms of the road access itself, it seems reasonable that if members are minded to grant that a road access, bearing in mind the vulnerabilities of the flooding element at that specific location, be covered by a planning condition suitably worded that the construction of that access shall not damage the flood infrastructure that's already been installed on that site. Now, if in terms of reasonableness, the applicant then come back and said, well, this is going to be proved too expensive, it's going to be a highly technical engineering operation, the alternative would be for them to come back and with an application simply for another road access at the requested distance from that proposed at the moment. So in terms of reasonableness, the roads request would mean a new application for the applicant. And we're only looking at this application as presented to us at this moment in time. So it's not possible to move the position of the road access through planning condition. It might be possible to address the issue of road access improved engineering through planning condition. And if that proves not suitable to the applicant, they can then appeal that condition or indeed come back in with a revised application, but would allow members to move forward with a determination at today's hearing if they are so minded.
So what I was really trying to get, Mr. Mullen, if the applicant was happy with the entrance that's proposed at the moment, and it was decided that the committee was in favour of this, they could just go ahead.
Yes.
That's fine. Probably, I was disappointed that we didn't have the hearing on February. Because as I always say, and I says it in the previous one, these are people's lives we're dealing with. But it's gave me a better chance to look at the policies. And it's, I was explaining to Mr. Frawley earlier on, it's something that I'd never really done before. I relied on the officer to do it. But everybody's interpretation is completely different. Your interpretation of that policy might be different from mine's. So it's allowed me, in the day that we decided to continue the 3 applications because of the National Planning Framework 4 on the Tuesday. We had an application coming in the same area at Blackness in the weekly list for approval. And I'm saying to myself, so what's the difference between the application we're going to debate and the application that came in? I know they're two different applications, but I just felt it was unfair for this application because the other ones were determined. And as the convener says, we've been out to visit many applications in that area, and every one of them for me has been approved. So when reading together policy PE 14 and HC05, provide the basis upon which support for the erection of new houses for agricultural workers can be found. And in the report, as the convener says, the evidence provided in the SAC Labour report clearly demonstrates that the operation of the farming unit at present is equivalent to 0.75 labour units. The applicant clearly wishes to develop the farm further, as they have, as you see in the report. The Castlemilk Murret ewes, that's a rare breed sheep, and they could have went and owned the sheep, but they decided to go with this anyway. The applicant clearly wishes to develop the farm, which will increase its labour requirement and provides justification for a full-time presence on the site for the various reasons set out in this report. On this basis, I am in the view that the applicant can justify its terms and policies PE 14 and HC05. In terms of SG01, I am happy that the criteria has been met and that the house is acquired in connection with ongoing agricultural operations. In the terms of its integration with the surrounding landscape, I am happy that the existing tree belt, which runs down to the east side of the site, will create an appropriate backdrop for the proposed house and is sufficient to ensure that a satisfactory degree of landscape integration is achieved, and on this point that the terms of SG1 are met. So I'm formally second your proposal,
Fine.
convener.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
I am happy to go along with that, except for the access road leaving the plot onto the main road there. And I think that we should be looking for a different place back from the dip so that there's no damage being done to the gullies, etc. And that, I think, is what yourself was suggesting, Mr. Long.
It's an option promoted by the Roads Authority through their consultation response. The concern of the Roads Authority with regards to the gullies is that the position is that might be addressed technically through construction of the access at that point. And I feel comfortable that we could try and cover that by planning condition to look at that fragility of the gully situation. We could cover that by planning condition. So instead of moving the access, we could try and somehow make sure that the construction standard of the access would take into account the fragility of the flooding element, because I think in the road response it said they had no issue with the visibility splay that was being proposed at the existing access. It was the issue of the fragility of the flooding and the dip that seemed to be the issue. And I'm not an engineer, but we could try and look at that through planning condition. I don't know if that answers your question, Councillor.
That answers it perfectly.
Yeah,
I'm quite happy to accept it.
I would be happy. Both the summaries to myself and Councillor Kerr in terms of policies.
Yes, I have, convener. So I think the committee is unanimous in its desire to grant the application, and I think that's on the basis that it does comply with policies PE 14, HC05, including the provisions of supplementary guidance 01.
Yeah.
Insofar as they're satisfied that the house is required in connection with an agricultural business, and to the extent that those policies, those parts of those policies, deal with that, developments of that nature, and that in terms of PE 18, that it doesn't create any adverse effects on the landscape and the character of the area, and that it complies also with that policy. And insofar as the decision notice is concerned, I take it the committee are happy to delegate that to officers, and including the provision of appropriate conditions to include the issue about the road access in terms
technical
of
work. Yeah.
Yes, I think as Mr. Milne says, the difficulty with trying to insist on an alternative access is that it couldn't be done in the confines of this application. So I think in order to get a disposal, I think the compromise is there that condition would be appropriately worded, and a technical solution could hopefully be arrived at.
Okay. We're all happy with that? Happy with that? Okay then. That just takes me to wind up today's meeting. I would like to thank my colleagues for coming, Councillor Kerr and the Deputy Convener, Councillor Kelly, and our officers. And once again, I would just like to say that planning local review bodies are very difficult in terms of the robustness that's required for the decision making. And I think through everybody today and our officers, I think we've complied with that. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, everybody. Thank you.